Welcome to Law Talk with Ethel Mitchell. I am your host, Attorney Ethel Mitchell. Welcome to all who are listening live throughout the world on Radio 1, station 1450 AM, WOLDC.com, LawTalkWithEthelMitchell.com, and over the free TuneIn app. This program is brought to you by my law office, Wills and Trust, LLC, where I prepare wills, trust, and power of attorneys, advanced medical directives. If you or someone you know needs a will or a trust or assistance administering an estate, call me at 202-772-1988, 202-772-1988. For those who may have missed our big announcement last week, this radio program, Law Talk with Ethel Mitchell, is growing. We are expanding into an hour-long program. Beginning in 2 weeks, in July, we will be airing from 9 to 10 o'clock a.m. We will have more time to bring you more information, to receive your questions and comments, and to add additional features that I would like to bring to our listening audience. We're planning new programs, and one of the things that I was talking with my radio producer, Stacy, this morning about is I would love to announce family reunions. I'd love to give a shout out to people who are having family reunions. Everybody talks about, all the naysayers about how the black family is dying and bloody this and bloody that. But in fact, I believe the black family is doing a lot, is very much alive and well. And so many of us are having family reunions around the country. So if you will send us an email at ethel@lawtalkwithethelmitchell.com or Royster, R-O-Y-S-T-E-R, S Royster rather, at lawtalkwithethelmitchell.com. Let me know about your family reunions. And if you do something in particular, like do books or do things that bring out the history of your family, send us an email. Send us your phone number if you don't mind. So if I have a question, I can call you, and I would love to do a shout out about our families. So remember, set your clocks early, 9 to 10, beginning July 5th. We'll be on the air for a full hour, same station, same websites. Tell your friends and listen in. Law is powerful. As I say every week, it can help you or it can hurt you. It impacts everything you do. What you don't know about the law can really hurt you, and what you do know about the law will empower you. Each week, my aim is to empower you by talking about the law and bringing you professionals and or in the law or related fields to enlighten and inform you. This is National Home Ownership Month, and as I wanted to announce also today in Washington, D.C., down at the Convention Center, there are all kinds of exhibits about home ownership. So if there's anybody listening who is interested in owning your own home, go to the Convention Center today. And Marcia Griffin has a company called Home Free USA. She doesn't know I'm doing this, but it is an excellent company. And if you want to buy a home, look up Home Free USA. Tell them Ethel Mitchell sent you. She went to Fisk like I did. And they will do everything from helping you get your credit together, helping you get a mortgage. I mean, they really work with people, and I think they have almost a 100% success rate. So do look up Home Free USA and go down to the Convention Center if you're able to. Last week, I began a discussion about various ways to take title to a home. There was so much ground to cover, and our listeners were really engaged. So stay tuned for part 2 as we continue. And remember, all of our programs are archived at lawtalkwithethelmitchell.com. So if you missed a program, go there. The programs are posted there by my webmaster, Earl Hook. We want you to be part of the conversation, so call us at 1-800-450-7876, 1-800-450-7876. My producer, Stacy, is standing by to receive your calls, and tweet us at LawTalkEM. So let's get started. Stacy, because we have little time, as usual, let's go right into the questions, if you don't mind. And instead of going through a whole introducing me and so on, if you don't
we can't
mind.
share your wonderful bio. Okay.
No, that's okay.
All right.
Really, thank you.
Well, thanks, Ethel. We're flipping the script, as Ethel says, and so we're going to interview her today as our expert, and not interview, but have a discussion. And we really do want you, all of our listeners, to make sure to join in. So please call us at 1-800-450-7876 or tweet us at LawTalkEM to join the conversation. So, Ethel, you shared a lot of great information last week, and the phones were ringing off the hook, so we're glad about that. Obviously, this is an area that people are concerned about and need to know more information about.
Really
so, like you said, let's jump right in. You clarified last week, but let's review for those that may have missed last week's show. What is a title, and why is that important?
The title is the legal ownership of property. We're talking mainly about real property. When lawyers say real property, we mean houses, something that's attached to the land, okay? Title to real property is shown in a public document. A lot of people don't realize that whether you have the original deed or not, you can go to the Recorder's of Deeds office in most cities, or every county has a place that has all of their deeds recorded. And you can go there and you can see who owns property, and they will make a copy of the deed for you. And it's usually only $4 or $5, so it's worth looking up. Definitely looking up.
That is good to know.
And yeah, a lot of people don't realize that. They think they don't have the title because the mortgage companies used to keep the original deed. That doesn't matter. It really doesn't. You know.
And what is tenancy by the entirety?
Tenancy by the entirety. Yes. Is a form of ownership that can only be entered into between married couples. Mm-hmm. What it means is a husband and a wife. I meant to ask, and I forgot to ask Attorney Michelle Thomas if it applies to same-sex couples. I really don't know the answer to that yet, but I'll find out. Mm-hmm. But married persons own property, can own it by tenants by the entirety. That's one of the ways they can own it. Mm-hmm. And what it means is that when one dies, the other one automatically owns all of it.
Okay.
What's also important about it is it keeps creditors of an individual spouse from being able to attach the property and force a sale, because they can put it on the deed, they can put a lien on the deed, but they can't force a sale, because it cannot be broken as long as it's tenants by the entirety, okay? Mm-hmm. But there is something else that a married couple should know about. If you're a blended couple, if you have children, maybe one spouse has children and the other spouse has other children, and you really each of them want their individual children or their individual families to inherit their portion of the house. What you can do is you can change it to tenants in common. That means that each of you own, let's say we're talking two people, 1/2 and 1/2. And that means also that you can deed or you can will your half to whoever you want, and he can will his half to whoever he wants. And that's one way a blended family is able to, as part of an estate planning process, make sure that their properties go the way they want.
Does that get kind of messy, if someone dies and then one part of the family owns a piece of the property, and are you forced to sell?
Well,
how does
as
that
part
work?
of that, what you would do is you would say, as long as my spouse is alive, they have a life estate in even into my share.
Okay.
So the deed would say tenants in common, but they would say subject to a life estate by my spouse. So as long as my spouse is living, they have the right to live in the house. But when they die, then the house is sold and split between the two parties. You can do that by deed, you can do it by will, but you have to have either joint tenancy or you have to have a will that says, even though I own everything, when I die, I want the house to be sold, and half goes to my spouse's family and half goes to my family. I do quite a bit of that you can do it in a trust, you can do it in a will, you can do it in a deed. It's very important that it be done, though. It gets messy when it's not done.
I can imagine.
It gets messy when it's not done.
And you mentioned blended families and blended couples. Tenants in common rather than tenants by the entirety. How is that different?
Tenants by the entirety means when one dies, the other one owns it outright. In other words, if it's same situation, if you had children, he had children, when you died, everything would go to her. And when she died, if you hadn't made any other arrangements, everything would go to her family. That's how a lot of property gets out of the family, because a person, marries somebody new, maybe their mother died or their father died, they take on a new spouse, they die before the new spouse, and then their children never gets anything. And that happens quite a bit. Happens quite a bit. But you can provide for it to making sure that it does not happen. Okay?
Very interesting. Well, you're getting it all right here. So, Law Talk with Ethel Mitchell. I'm your co-host for today and executive producer, Stacey Royster, and we're speaking with our fabulous and knowledgeable host, sharing her wealth of expertise with all of us, Ms. Ethel Mitchell, attorney Ethel Mitchell. We want to hear from you. Call us at 1-800-450-7876 if you have questions or comments. And Ethel, how can our listeners reach you if they have questions?
202-772-1988.
Okay.
Okay, 202-772-1988 is my office number.
Great.
Yes.
Let's talk about life estates and how they are used to provide for sick persons or other situations.
A life estate is when somebody has the right to live in a property for their life. And then when they die, it goes to somebody else who's called a remainder. That is a very useful way of taking care of someone in the family, someone you love. It doesn't have to be a family member. We're talking about family because that's usually who it is. But let's say you have a child. We have a lot of families where the child just never moved out of the house. Or they moved back, for any number of reasons. It might be to take care of the aging parent or a sick person. It might be because they didn't have the money to move out. It might be because they're disabled. You can provide in your will that as long as that person is alive, they have a right to live in my home. And then when they die, then it may go to your other heirs, it may be sold, whatever else you may want to do with it. And that allows you to know that your loved one has a roof over their head. And that's of particular concern, especially in this area where property is becoming so expensive. We have a lot of families who know that once their parent dies, they would never be able to afford to buy another home.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Right.
And so but there are other children who may have their own homes, and, and
they can't just show up and put that sibling out.
If you put that down either on the deed or in a will, that child has a life estate in the property. That's really, really critical. And you have to do it in the right way. You have to be careful. You may not want to do a life estate in Washington, D.C. Remember we said each state is different.
Right.
Okay, if you do a life estate in Washington, D.C., D.C. takes the position that now the remainder, whoever is going to own it after this person, is the owner. And so you may lose all the tax benefits that you had before. I've seen them do it. So you really want to talk to a lawyer about doing it so that you don't trigger some other unwanted consequences, because they're important. And while we're on it, let's talk a little bit more about something else people don't know about. It always surprises me. There's something called a step-up in basis. Now, that is really important in the DMV. What that means is this. When your parents bought their house, let's say they paid $10,000 for it. I know houses on 16th Street that were bought for $10,000 and $25,000, okay? That house is now worth $500,000-$600,000. Okay, if your parents put your name on their deed, and I'm using that language because that's how people usually talk. They change the deed and they either put I hope they don't put your name solely on it, but even if they, but let's say they do that.
Mm-hmm.
You get their basis.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is you now own the house, and your basis is the $10,000 that they paid for it. So when they died, let's say you decide you're going to sell the house, and you sell the house for $500,000. You then pay capital gains tax on the difference between the $10,000 that they paid for it and the $500,000 that it was worth when they died.
Very interesting.
Whereas, if you waited and instead have them to either do the new transfer on death deed that we're going to talk about in a minute because I want to get there, or through a will or a trust, you inherit it, you get the basis of the value of the house when they died. That's called a step up in basis. So instead of getting it by gift, which gave you their basis, which is the $10,000 that they got it for, where you have to pay capital gains on the difference, you get it at the $500,000 value because that's what it's worth when they die. So if you sell the house, you don't have to pay capital gains unless you sell it for more than even what it was worth when they died. That is a huge tax difference.
Yes, it makes a huge difference. Huge.
And so many people think that they can, well, we're going to just avoid the lawyer and just put my child's name on the deed.
Something else I wanted to ask you, Ethel, right before we go into transfer on deed.
On death deeds.
On death deeds. And that's new in Virginia and D.C.
Yes.
What we were just talking about, how does it matter, if at all, whether the house is already paid for?
Doesn't matter.
Or it doesn't matter.
Title is title, and mortgage is mortgage. So those are two very different things.
Great. I wanted to make sure that everybody's clear.
Yeah.
And so if you...
In fact, a lot of people, I say, bring me your deed, because I just want to see what it says. Mm-hmm. A lot of times the deed doesn't say what you think it says. Mm-hmm. And people bring me the deed of mortgage. The deed of a deed of trust, rather. Mm-hmm. The deed of trust is not your deed. The deed of trust is a mortgage. Okay?
Gotcha.
And the deed is the deed. It's either quitclaim, deed, warranty deed, but it's deed. It's who you bought it from. It says sold to whoever it is by somebody. That's the deed.
Got it.
And that controls your title in 90% of the cases.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this great information. Now, let's talk about the transfer on death deeds.
Transfer on death deed are new statutes that have been passed in Virginia and in D.C. It's a particular kind of deed that says, I deed my house to somebody when I die. Essentially, that's what it says. That deed is recorded. It's signed, it's notarized, witness, the whole thing. And it's recorded, but it doesn't take, it has to be recorded while the person who owns the property is alive. Okay? What it does is it means that when that person dies, that house automatically then goes to the person whose name is on the deed. It avoids what had been the situation before where you had to probate that deed to get it from the dead person to the live person, unless it was in a trust. Okay? I don't know if we're going to have time to get to trust, but unless it was in a trust, if mama owned the house or daddy owned the house and they died, mm-hmm. and whether they had a will or not, you usually had to go to probate to get the house from their name into whoever they wanted it to go to. Okay? Presumably they did a will saying so. Or by intestacy. With this new deed, this new form of deed in D.C. and in Virginia, the deed is actually recorded ahead of time. It's a very particular type of deed.
And this is a good thing. This is a positive step, right?
I think it's very great. I really do. You have to be competent, of course, to sign the deed, But what happens is you can change your mind. The person that signed the deed can revoke the deed. Only that person can revoke the deed.
Do they have to tell the person that they...
They don't have to. No, you don't have to. Just like I tell people, when you do a will,
later, huh?
You don't have to tell people what's in your will either. That's your business, okay? But I think there's a phone call. But you really want to do that if that is. it's good when you have not a whole lot of people whose name you want to put on the deed.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Can't do it yet in Maryland. Okay.
Got
not
it.
yet.
Well, we have a caller, so Daryl, please send the caller right on. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning. I appreciate the very good show for information. I actually missed last week's show, and so I actually have a three-part question, or comment still, basically. First of all, I wanted to know, since I missed last week's show, the website that I can actually get the recordings for the information, because there's a lot of very good information that's being given out by the show here, and so I just wanted to make sure that we can actually have access to that.
Sure, it's www.lawtalkwithethelmitchell.com.
Okay, great. And then the second question I had is I know they mentioned something about the background. I wanted to know the background of the individual the expert there, because in that way we would know the expertise of the individual, though, too. But I know you're into topics and things of information that you're giving out. Maybe sometime you can give us that background, though. And then the third question also for future shows, could they discuss reverse mortgages also?
That's a good topic. Yes, we can. Yes, we
okay,
can.
well, I appreciate that. And as it said, the background, once maybe, because I do like the show.
Well, I'm glad. Keep listening. Keep listening.
Oh, yeah,
tell your friends.
I will definitely tell my friends, because it's not talking about people and things, and it's actually getting people to do this thing stuff. And I think we do have a positive community that versus talking about all negative stuff, though. So
yes.
I appreciate the show.
Well, thank you very much. If you will email me at Ethel@lawtalkwithethelmitchell.com, we can put you on the e-blast, where we send out notices to people of once a week of the topics that are going to be talked about on the show. I would be glad to do that. Okay.
We'll definitely do that, though. And I like the ideas how you're able to get people to save their houses in D.C. As you pointed out, that a lot of folks that are living in the city there, they will not be able to afford those houses that their parents had, though.
They're not.
And at least with the strategies that you telling people, that's the way for them to keep it without avoiding paying that high capital gain tax too.
Yeah.
And that was a very good tip there, though.
Yeah, so that's a big one, and it's something a lot of people don't know.
And you can find out more about Ethel's fabulous background and her expertise on the website also.
Yeah.
Okay, appreciate that.
LawTalkWithEthelMitchell.com. Yes.
And we have a Facebook page, too, by the same name. Okay?
Okay, great. And appreciate the show, and thanks for the community. Appreciate
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to be moving to 9 to 10 July 5th, okay? And just so you know, I did go to Fisk University and Columbia Law School, and I do wills, trust, and estate planning. As it's 2 minutes we have left to go. So anyway, I'm so glad that people are listening. I want you to tune in next week. We're going to have a guest, Florence King, who's going to talk about another subject that is one of the major drivers away from home ownership, and that is credit. Florence is an expert in telling people how to repair your credit, even if you've gone through foreclosure. She really knows what she's talking about. So please listen in next week, and we will be on with some more good information. This is Attorney Ethel Mitchell, your host. I do wills, trust, and estate planning. I also help people with their deeds and all the kind of stuff we've been talking about today. Call me at 202-772-1988, 202-772-1988. And I hope you will listen in next week. As I said before, as part of our new program, we're going to have new features. So if your family is doing a family reunion, email me or Stacy at lawtalkwithethelmitchell.com, and we'd love to give you a shout out. Have a good week, and I wish everyone the very best. Have a good day.
You've been listening listening to Law Talk with Ethel Mitchell. Be sure to tune in next Saturday at 11:30 a.m. for another informative broadcast. To reach Attorney Mitchell, you may do so by calling 202-772-1988. That's 202-772-1988. Or log on to her website, www.lawtalkwithethelmitchell.com.